Hi my loves. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the main principles that we use in the Dance Alchemy training, and you can just take home these secrets and try them at home with yourself and see what you think. This is some of the base of where this movement practice comes from. And of course it comes from a whole metaphysical base of understanding that we'll go over in the Monday Metaphysical Mastery classes, and then we put into practice on Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday is right after the Metaphysical Mastery class, so it's all fresh and it's super present, and you get to feel that inside of you and freshen your consciousness as we do the movement for the first time. And then we get a day of rest, and then we do it again, and then we repeat next week for 4 weeks. So it's a lunar cycle, and it gets to be ingrained in the psyche on at least the most fundamental level, of course. Only a month of something can only take you so far. To really master something, they say you need 10,000 hours. So that puts it all in perspective. But a month really gives you a good amount of experiential integration on something, and hopefully this will be a good foundation to integrate the mystical experience and ground yourself in it enough so that you can then draw on it whenever you want and put it into practice whenever you want, when you're alone or doing other things, like doing other dance practices in your life or other spiritual practices in your life or mindfulness practices and other meditations. It's there to enhance all of that stuff for you. And some of the principles that we experience in the meditation and that we then bring into the movement is the merging of the unified field, merging with the unified field. So we go into a state where you're actually seeing and experiencing everything as energy. And in that space, so many things open up. And I just made a little video on Shakti and the Divine Feminine that describes how when you're in that state of openness in the void, that isn't really a void, that's when something comes out of it. That's when the Shakti arises. And it's just this hyper-potent state of omnipotence. And that builds just like when the atmosphere is building into a storm, it becomes ionically charged, and then lightning strikes once it builds to a point of maximum density, of ionic density, and then it has to be released. So we go into that state and we supercharge ourselves and then direct it in various ways. And when you're in that state, it makes the body very relaxed and very pliable, and supercharges it, so that then when we use the body and we focus the energy into it, it can take any form, and it can channel any intention very powerfully, and you can just move yourself perfectly just by intending it, really. But we also have many other techniques to use other than just, going into a supercharged state and intending movement. And some of them are, and I'm just going to give you a few of the keys here, is elongation and expansion. So whenever you move, you need to make space for that movement to happen in your body. So if you're arching your back, or you're bending to the side, or you're doing any kind of movement, you have to really make space for that movement to happen. So if I move my arm, I'm not just putting it out to the side, I'm elongating my energy all through it. And the way that you do that most effectively is to center in your heart, in your chest. And this is the center of your being, energetically speaking, from the chakra energy body standpoint. You have 3 above and 3 below. And also from the standpoint of this is the center of yourself, your causal being, when you go deep into the deepest parts of yourself, this is the seed of your intuition and who you are. And that's why when we search ourselves, we search our hearts for the truth, the ultimate truth. Because it's only with the heart that one sees rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. So, it's also true from a physical standpoint. And we have many different centers, and I'm not saying it's the center of gravity. Obviously, that's wherever it is on you as a person, depending on your proportions. I wouldn't even say that it's necessarily down here, it really depends. Everything's different on everybody. But the energetic center of your movement should come from here, so that you as a being are grounded primarily here. And then you can gauge that by one of the other things that we also do is we attune to several different layers of energy, and one of those layers is the gravitational aspect. So you learn to actually feel and move the gravity of your body around with your will, with your intention, and with your focus. So I can create leverage in my body in all kinds of different ways and pull and push on it with my mind. And that will help me move. It's not happening with just brute force. It's happening with my whole consciousness. And that makes it so much easier. So when you're elongating, you're really extending your energy out from the center. And you always want to be uncomplicating things, clearing things out, making it as clean and uncomplicated as possible, as pure as possible. You don't want energies to be going tangled back in on themselves. That's how you get knots, that's how you get injuries and all kinds of problems. So we want purity, we want clarity of movement and intent and the way that we direct our energy. So we center here. And then it's like a starfish. This is the most complicated joint in the body. We have one line of energy going out through the top of the head, elongating through the neck and out the top of the head, connecting to the lines of force around you in the air. If you extend the line of force at the top of your head, you can feel it as it connects to the lines of force and the energy around you, and it lifts you up. It levitates you. You have to do far less with your muscles, and yet your muscles develop in a much better way. The other ones are going out through the arm, through the shoulder. So the force of this joint comes from here. So it's already being directed as it goes through the shoulder. The arms do not come from the shoulder. They go through the joint. You'll have far less mobility in a joint if you're trying to hold up your body from the joint that you're trying to move. So the support for it, the impetus for it, it comes from beneath it, inward of it, central of it, and then pushes out through the shoulder, through the center of the arm, out all of the joints and out the tips of the fingers, and extending to lines of force beyond. And when you really connect the lines of force inside your body into the ones beyond you, again, you become suspended. And it pulls you out more than you could do otherwise, gives you extra space. And that allows your consciousness to seep into every little fiber of your being, all the little molecules. And the more space you create, the more room there is for your awareness to be articulate and to move with continuity and to put the artistry and the beauty into every little fiber of your being. And then you have, again, from here, you have 2 more lines of force going down because we become bilateral. So even though we have a trunk here, the muscles are constructed such that we should already be bilateral, already be. Again, we do not move from the hips. The hips need to be fully mobile. They need to be relaxed. They need to be supported already. We move from above the hips. So from here, from the chest and from the back, we're already pushing out one side. So when I move my leg, it's coming from here. So I can hold it up and I can do things with it and I can be mobile with it, because this is where the brunt of it is being taken and it's already being directed. I'm not crunching in like this. I'm already directing it from here, wherever I want to go. If I'm going to the front, if I'm going to the side, I've already decided. My intention is already decided. There's only one force, one line of energy, and it moves through the body seamlessly out the leg in the direction that we're intending it to move. And that allows the weight and the pressure to be on the larger muscle groups. Sorry, these are loud road. And going through the body as the smaller muscles take over. So there's a lot we can do in the hip, especially if we use the glutes to really stack the hip and push on the hip with the glutes. We can make more space in the hip and we can get more mobility in the hip. But not if you're gripping from there, not if you're holding it from there, not if you see your legs as the impetus and the intention for your legs starting from here. You have to start from here, and then you can move from there. And the rest of it can go to aspects of aesthetics, aspects of dexterity and articulation, rather than brute force. That's how you get a very unaesthetic looking musculature. If you see people who are very aligned, it creates a beautiful musculature. No unnecessary bulges and inefficient use of the muscles. The muscles are beautiful in all shapes and sizes, so I'm not judging. I'm just saying, when you see someone that's very aligned, their muscles are formed beautifully and perfectly, with a natural aesthetic to it. And that's just something to make a note of. It's not important in any other way. I think all bodies have the potential to be absolutely beautiful just by being realized and expressed in whatever way is genuine for you. But just from an efficiency perspective, when you're aligned, when you're stacked, when you're moving from the larger muscle groups and then going down into more detail, and the smaller, more detail-oriented muscles are not responsible for holding the brunt of the weight and the control and all of that stuff. So if you see yourself as a radiating star or a starfish or whatever, with the one line here, two here, and two here, I assure you just that alone, you will go 1,000 times farther into every stretch, and it'll be so much easier to move in every possible direction, to elongate, to have a pure, clean movement with a clear intention, to channel all of your emotion and artistry and expression through your body more smoothly and beautifully with awareness, and it supports every aspect of it, of the movement. And I thought it would be good just to show you through this directing of the energy, because one of the things that's also really good and efficient to it is counterbalancing. And when your energies are extending outward and you're doing a movement, that movement is supported by counterbalance and extension outward through other parts of the body. So even though I'm just moving my leg, in order to move my leg in a way where it's very isolated and doesn't disrupt the rest of my body, I actually have to elongate and counterbalance through the rest of my body quite a bit. So if I'm really extending up off my legs and off my hips, my arms are going out into infinity and balancing me, then when I take my leg and I move it, it's quite easy, because I can move my gravity around, move my impetus and my energy around in ways to counterbalance it quite easily. Allows me to stay relatively stationary. So similarly, with stretching, there are ways of counterbalancing the stretch and moving your intention into the stretch that allow you to go deeper, and starting with the radiating principle, radiating in a star formation from your chest. So we can look at that in many different ways. We could look at it just from here and doing the side stretch. And there are different principles of stretching. This is just one. We have different principles of tuning into aspects of the energy, the gravity, the Shakti or the direct current, the electrical current aspect. The gravity is like, it's the magnetism aspect of it, so we can actually move and extend the weight of ourselves. And the electrical current allows us to charge the body in different ways and use these elongation principles and counterbalancing, connecting to the forces around you. And then the light itself, just going into the light, going into that state where everything is energy and we're in that omnipotence and charging up and becoming fluid and liquid and ready to take any form and be powerful when we direct that energy. And then the aspect of the ecstasy, because bliss and ecstasy is a natural state of alignment with the universe, with the essence of the universe. And it should feel good, because if whatever you're doing does not feel good, your body will tense up against it. You'll get resistance, and there's no point. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of energy if you're encountering resistance in yourself. So when you're stretching, you don't push yourself past the point of where it feels good. And now there can be a little bit of pain in that if you enjoy it. I like to push myself to where my body, it's like, oh yeah, you really feel it, it gets in deep. And there's a certain amount of pain. But it's a good pain, and I'm only pushing it to where I enjoy it. Because I know the moment I'm feeling nervous or scared, or like I'm going past where I'm able to relax into it, I'm just fighting myself, and there's no point in doing that. So keeping an eye on that is very, very key. And we can use all these principles while we're stretching, and we do, to go deeper. But just directing it from the starfish is going to show you so much. So when we just go into a side stretch, again, one of the lines of force is going down from the chest, down, out the hip, out the thigh, the knee, and obviously back into itself. So it becomes very apparent that there's this kind of like force. So it's like as you push out into that, the naturalness of the shape brings the energy back in. So you just push out, it flips the hip under, and it goes back into itself so that you're braced, you're naturally braced. This one I can just put, so I can relax into it, I can just relax my elbow onto the ground, and that also allows me to twist into it, so that I can keep my form. But you can also, you want to play with where you put your body, and this is another principle that we use. So then so this is the aspects of energy that are the underlying principles, but when it comes to stretching, there's actually 4 kinds of stretching that I like to use. One is relaxed stretching, where you go into a completely passive state, and you really get into your body and release and release and release and let go and really allow everything to come out. And I feel like that kind of stretching, when I spend a lot of time doing that, I really work out like all the issues and heal it, and there's a naturalness that occurs in the stretching. And they say you need at least 2 minutes to actually stretch a muscle. So when you're doing passive stretching, you want to be in it for at least that long. So again, don't push yourself past your comfort, because you need to be able to relax and release into it. It should feel good. And then I do active stretching, where you put intention into it, and where you put energy into it in a certain way. So with this, again, the line of force pushing through and under. This one through and under. And then from the chest, obviously we go out the top of the head and bend it over, and you can connect that line of force in different ways. And then this arm, you can take it, I like to brace against this foot, and now I have my shoulder on my like shin kind of, and I'm braced against it this way so I don't rock too much up. And I can just relax here and do a passive stretch. And I can just move my shoulder joint and counterbalance it in different ways, and it feels really good. And I can bring it forward and get like another part of my spine and my side. And relax and go deeper and deeper, and then alternate between relaxing and doing an active stretch where it's like I relax into it and then I push into it. I push into it. So I move my intention out from my starfish, out through my body, and I elongate, and I'm active in it. And then I relax again. And then you can do a resistance stretch where you actually push against the stretch, so like as if you're trying to come out of it. So if I were going to do that in this position, I would push like I'm pushing my foot into the floor, and that actually pushes me deeper into the stretch. So if I push my foot into the floor and like I'm trying to come out of it, and then if I wanted to do another resistance part, I could put weight here and I can push against my own hand. And that allows your muscles to like really go deeper into it. It's quite intense. So you only want to do that for a certain amount of time, 10 counts or something. Whatever feels good. So what I'm doing is I'm holding my head and pulling on it a little bit while I push against it. Now I'm only doing that enough to where it feels good and where it gives me some weird leverage to kind of get deeper into my body, and it's something you have to just feel when you do it, but trust me, it works. And then the third aspect is, or the fourth aspect rather, relax, active, and resistance, is undulation stretching. And this feels amazing, where it's like, where you're just exploring the different permutations of the stretch. It's like, it's not really related necessarily to, you could be doing the other kinds of stretch also. Like right now I'm doing some resistance. Then I'm gonna let that go once I feel like I'm deep enough into it. And I'm gonna go into a little bit more passive, and then I'm gonna go into a little bit more like directed, where I'm like really elongating and sending energy out through my limbs from my starfish. My star emanation. But I'm doing it in a way where I'm changing what I'm doing. I'm not static in it. You don't have to be static in it. You want to, in the undulation stretching, you really want to be massaging your body from the inside. It feels quite amazing. It's very pleasurable. You can get to a very deep ecstatic state with just these stretching techniques. Just using your own intuition, tuning into your own intuition to go deeper into them. So like if you haven't been stretching, like I haven't had a good stretch today at all, even though I was going to make a stretching video. So using a combination of these techniques and going into a potent, omnipotent state where I'm experiencing everything as energy, melting into it, merging into it, becoming liquid, letting go of my container, my form, and then going into an intuitive flow of different undulations, projecting, elongating, and relaxing, and then resistance, where I'm pushing against the floor, and that allows me leverage to just get deeper into my stretch. into my stretch. Like here with this one, what I'm doing is I'm twisting away from it, and that allows me to, I can push down against, like I'm trying to like scissor my legs closed or something, or do like one of those like moves where you stand up from the split that Prince does. But I'm not doing it super hard. I'm just doing it enough to like where it feels good, and it allows me to activate the muscle in a way that allows me to get deeper into the stretch. And I'm also just elongating it too. I'm also just taking moments where I'm really being clean with my intention and my energy, so I'm taking the time to direct my energy through the body in a very clean, very intentional way that removes blockages, smooths out weird places where you're gripping in weird ways and you're more injury prone. And I'm doing a combination of undulating stretching, like if I massage my body like this, do these little circles in my hips, feels amazing. And I'm not even really like focusing it too much in my hips. Like if I just move my body like this, it pulls on the muscles in my hips so that I'm massaging them without having to like really do, I can keep them very relaxed. Like I'm really moving more my upper body and pulling on my hips while they're still pretty relaxed. And that way, it's only if I intentionally put energy through them that I even need to like activate them at all. So a second ago, I was not at all warm, and now I'm feeling like super yummy in my hips, and I can roll my hips around and massage and get into the front, you know, into a little bit of the front split, which is always like harder for me than the side splits. Feels amazing. You know, it should feel really good. And also when you're in those positions and you're doing these types of things, it's like, let's just relax the hips. Don't put a lot of pressure on them necessarily. Like if I center my chest and I do the radiation thing, I elongate up through my head. I lift my weight, I'm moving my gravity up off my hips. And I can just elongate through them and just let them relax. I can take the weight up off of them. And when I do that, you know, they just fall into place. And I can counterbalance through sending a line of energy out the other shoulder, the other arm, and out this one, so that my whole upper body is sort of like being pulled apart. It's like you kind of want to feel when you're stretching, it's like you're being pulled apart from the inside. All of these joints are being pulled apart, and the energy is being smoothed out. And your whole consciousness is getting into all these little joints. So that's the stretching that we do. And then a lot of what we do through the movement warm-up is isolations, body isolations, so that the body produces a lubricant in the joint when you continually move it like that, and you exercise its full range of motion through the isolation. So it opens it up, and then when you do it with these principles and these intentions, it really allows you to move differently, more cleanly, more beautifully, and with a level of awareness and articulation that wasn't there before, and it just grows exponentially, especially when you do it through these meditative states You go into the omnipotent state where everything is energy and you just supercharge it and liquefy it. And then you move it. You direct that energy with your intention in this clean way of where you're elongating. And you're exploring the full range of motion of your body. So the neck is very fragile and very complex. So I like to start there, and I like to do, we actually start with these types of like pulling out through the shoulder and the neck first, because this is such a complicated joint. You're going this way, this way, this way. So we really want to make space in here. So we just, when you really put your energy, and as Bruce Lee put it, emotional content into your movement, your whole consciousness, it makes a huge difference. You don't have to do it a million times when you do it like that. So we start with the top vertebrae and really put all this intention into it, moving it in all the ways it can move. And as you're doing that, you're elongating through the whole body joint, this 5-pointed radiation. So when I go back, I'm counterbalancing down and out. And I go up, pulling down, counterbalancing down and out. And I go lower into the joint. Lower, it comes from a gradually more and more centralized place until it goes past the center and goes down into the base more. Exploring what that's like. Down to the root of the spine and the hips. And counterbalancing through the legs. And going side to side, starting back at the top, where it's most fragile. Have a lot of tension because that's where it connects to our head, and that's where we're overthinking, and that's where we think we originate from and exist from our brains. We don't. It's one aspect of ourselves. But as you well know, a person can still live without much of a brain. And the seat of ourself and our energy and our intuition and our power really comes from the heart. It's the most complex and coalescent point. And then we move it in circles and spirals because, again, the center point moves downward. Starting at the top, corkscrewing its way down into the more central point, elongating outward, and down into the spine. And we move it around, exploring the full range of motion. Shoulders, arms, hips, legs, circling the hips as we stand. Then there's a whole progression, and I'll make a whole other video on that. But I just wanted to talk about the different principles that we use in movement practice and show you a little bit how you can practically apply it in stretching and some of the stretching methods, and I encourage you to try it at home and see how it does. And then when you love it, come join us starting on the 19th in 1 week, the Dance Alchemy course, and it will change your life in so many ways. I absolutely guarantee you become more embodied, more empowered in every possible way, as a mystic, as a human being, as a mover, and just your potency in yourself and in the world. So reach out if you would like to join.